Hi, everyone. Thanks for taking the time out of your day today to tune into this symposium, and thanks to OIS for inviting us to speak to you all today. My name is Patrick Johnson. I'm the Chief Business Officer at Sydnexis. Sydnexis is a venture-backed company that's developing a low-dose atropine product to treat the progression of myopia in kids. And we employ a relatively virtual business model here at Sydnexis with a small number of full-time employees, and we utilize the expertise of a large number of industry-leading consultants. Sydnexis is a single product company currently conducting a pivotal phase 3 study testing our unique low-dose atropine drug product for the treatment of myopia progression in children. We've developed a novel formulation of low-dose atropine that takes advantage of D2O, which is a naturally occurring excipient that confers stability on low-dose atropine solutions and allows us to formulate our product at a higher pH than other products. Of course, getting a product as close as possible to physiologic pH will maximize comfort for children who will be using it chronically for many years. While D2O is a naturally occurring compound, we're the first company to use D2O in ocular formulations, allowing us to obtain very strong patent protection for our product, SID 101, which is currently covered by 5 issued patents in the US with strong international coverage as well. So why myopia? Over the past 20 years, global epidemiological data in hundreds of thousands of myopes have identified significant comorbidities that arise later in life that correlate with myopia severity as measured by worsening spherical equivalent. You can see on this slide that as SE gets worse, so does the risk for a number of blinding eye diseases, including macular CNV, glaucoma, and retinal detachment. It's been widely accepted, as I'll touch on a bit later in the slide deck, that myopia is a disease that needs to be treated as early as possible. You can see on the right, meta-analysis published in 2019 by Mark Bullimore and Noel Brennan. Their analysis suggests we should intervene early in myopia management and that we don't need to necessarily arrest myopia progression completely. If we simply minimize myopia progression, we can significantly reduce the risk of myopic maculopathies later in life. The global prevalence of myopia is quite alarming when you look at the numbers. Myopia is one of the most common eye diseases globally, and the number of treatable patients, which is defined as kids with actively progressing myopia, is more than 10 million in both the US and the EU, with almost 10 times that in Asia, which makes myopia one of the largest unmet eye diseases in the world. Due to the sheer number of kids with myopia in Asia, awareness of the disease has been very high. Around 2013, a group of researchers from Singapore, led by Donald Tan, revisited the use of an old drug, atropine, to treat myopia progression in kids. These ATOM studies were the first large studies to demonstrate that lower doses of atropine, lower than the approved doses of 1% and 0.5%, may be similarly as effective as higher doses of atropine in slowing progression of myopia in kids. But very importantly, these lower concentrations seem to minimize debilitating side effects that are seen with the higher doses of atropine. For example, with a single drop of 1% atropine, kids can be dilated and lose the ability to accommodate for over a week. So subsequent studies were conducted in almost a dozen countries globally, confirming the efficacy of low-dose atropine and really honing in on an ideal low dosage strength, somewhere between 0.01% and 0.05%, that maintains the optimal efficacy while reducing the extensive mydriasis, loss of accommodation, and blurred vision that occurs in the higher dosage strengths. As more and more published data became available, the large ophthalmic and optometric societies began to take notice and provide position statements. In 2017, the American Academy of Ophthalmology conducted a meta-analysis looking at data for more than 2,700 patients, concluding that there was sufficient level 1 evidence to support the use of low-dose atropine to treat myopia progression. Earlier this year, the European Society of Ophthalmology and the International Myopia Institute published a very thorough review that concluded, quote, there is consistent evidence of a benefit of slowing myopia development by the use of atropine eye drops, close quote. I think it's fair to say that it's unique and unusual to have so many industry associations recommending a treatment for patients before an FDA-approved treatment option is available, which is why it's essential we get a safe, high-quality, low-dose atropine formulation approved as soon as possible. Recently, the American Academy of Ophthalmology took another giant step towards addressing the myopia epidemic. In 2019, they announced a partnership with a number of large stakeholder organizations, including the American Association of Family Practitioners, the American Association of Pediatricians, and the American Optometry Association to form what they call the Global Myopia Task Force. You can see the ambitious task force initiatives on this slide, and importantly, at the end of 2020, the task force concluded in their first pioneering publication by endorsing low-dose atropine as, quote, the most reasonable approach to myopia control, close quote. At Sydnexis, we started experimenting with low-dose atropine formulations back in 2014. We quickly discovered that lower doses of atropine in water formulations can be highly unstable and degrade rapidly. This includes compounded formulations that are currently being prescribed. So in order to develop a stable water-based formulation, it appeared that we would have to drop the pH of the product below 5, which is very acidic for an eye drop and certainly wouldn't be well tolerated in kids. This is quite concerning because the options for kids when using a water-based formulation seem to be to use either an unstable compounded formulation at a higher pH that is neither release tested nor FDA approved, or a more stable formulation with a pH in the 3s or 4s. In fact, we've measured the pH of myopine, which is the most commonly used product in Singapore and China, and the pH of myopine is 4.6. So it became apparent that we needed to find a way to avoid using H2O so that we could increase the pH as much as possible to have a product that would both be stable and that would be well tolerated when used chronically by kids. So we came up with SID 101, where we substituted D2O for H2O and achieved a relative pH of 6 in a product that is stable at room temperature for more than 3 years. So fast forward to today, we're currently testing SID 101 in the clinic at 2 concentrations, 0.01 and 0.03, in a pivotal phase 3 study called the STAR study. This slide outlines the key elements of the STAR study. Our product is SID 101. It's a preserved multi-dose eye drop administered QHS, which is once daily before bedtime. We're currently targeting 840 patients in our 3-arm study, which will make this the largest study ever conducted testing the efficacy of a drug for the treatment of progressive myopia. We're testing a 3-year primary endpoint, which is the proportion of participants with confirmed myopic progression of greater than 0.75 diopters. And 2 of our key secondary endpoints are mean annual change in spherical equivalent and mean change in axial length. According to clinicaltrials.gov, we're the only RX product currently using axial length as an endpoint. So to wrap things up, Sydnexis is developing a novel, best-in-class formulation of low-dose atropine that will be stable for 3 years at room temperature and will have the highest pH of any product on the market to ensure maximum comfort for kids who will be using this drug chronically. We're currently enrolling our pivotal phase 3 STAR study with a 3-year primary endpoint that will read out in mid-2024. So I thank you for your time today.